Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. Ms. Burke, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Granger.
Here.
Mr. Boswell.
Here.
Mr. Klee.
Here.
Ms. Macbeth. Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Schaller.
Here.
Mr. Rogers.
All right. Our first item is approval of the minutes from the previous two meetings. We have April 17th and April 24th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Great. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of April 17 and April 24, 2019.
Second that motion.
Mr. Granger.
Aye.
Mr. Boswell.
Aye.
Mr. Klee.
I abstain.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Schaller.
Aye.
Great. We only have one item on our for our hearings today, which is PCR 1910, which is a request of BAJRANG LLC to rezone 216 Parkway Drive to a planned development housing district. We have a presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The owners of the Econo Lodge Motel are proposing to rezone .885 acres at 216 Parkway Drive from B2 Corridor Business District to PDH Planned Development Housing District in order to convert 48 existing motel rooms into 42 adaptive housing units. In your packet, I included the applicant's statement, the management plan, and the schematic plans. I also included in my memo the corridor commercial land use information. As you can see from this slide, land to the south, east, and west are designated corridor commercial land use, with land to the north, which is Parkway Townhomes, is designated high-density multifamily residential. This property, along with the properties to the south, east, and west, are zoned Corridor Business District B2. The land to the north is zoned Multifamily Dwelling District, RM2 conditional. The property at 216 Parkway Drive is proposed to be rezoned to Planned Development Housing District. The intent of the PDH district reads, it is established to encourage adaptive housing by allowing conversion of a limited number of existing hotel-motel rooms located in the B2 zoning district into affordable housing for individuals and families, and thereby fulfilling a housing need not addressed by the city's existing housing inventory. The PDH district should be located so as to take advantage of the proximity to existing transit routes, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and should not be located on sites that have significant redevelopment potential. The PDH district allows adaptive housing, which is defined in the zoning ordinance as primarily efficiency in one-bedroom units with adequate cooking facilities created from all or part of the existing hotel-motel and used for the purpose of providing non-permanent, affordable, and flexible term housing for individuals and families who may not have access to traditional housing alternatives in the city. The PDH district allows no more than 150 adaptive housing units in the city and no more than 101 facility or property. As I mentioned previously, the proposal is to convert 48 units into 42 adaptive housing units. The housing units will consist of 34 efficiency and 8 one-bedroom units, which will result in a density of 47.5 dwelling units per net acre. The applicant proposes rents in the range of $695 to $995 a month, depending on the size and layout of the unit and the number of individuals occupying the units. Flexible lease terms and deposits are proposed, with trash and water being included in the monthly rent. Individual electrical meters and heating and cooling units are proposed for each of the units. Each apartment will also be wired for internet and phone service should a tenant choose to contract with a provider for these services. The applicant also proposes to install a new fire suppression system and on-site closed-circuit security camera system for the complex. The site currently contains 50 parking spaces and 42 spaces are required for the project. The applicant proposes 42 parking spaces, with the current parking spaces in front of the hotel and pool area being removed and replaced with landscaping as shown on the conceptual site plan, which you have up on your screen. Landscape open space required for the site is 20%, and the applicant proposes 21%. In my memo to the commission, I also included the history of adaptive housing in the city. One thing I would note that based on previous approvals, there are 50 units that are available in the city for adaptive housing. The Site Plan Review Committee met in April and reviewed the proposal. The committee was supportive of the proposal and conceptual design and asked the applicant to investigate additional bike racks, a dog waste station, picnic area, and recycling container. The applicant has added an additional bike rack station at the south side of the building, and you can see that on the slide. He is also proposing to have the dog waste station in the island that you see at the upper left corner. And they've also included picnic tables and an arbor adjacent to the pool. They are investigating the feasibility of recycling, but have not found a good location at this time without losing additional parking. This adaptive housing project is located in an area that is designated by the 2013 comp plan as corridor commercial land use. The proposal to convert 48 units into 42 adaptive housing units. The intent statement of the PDH district says this is established to encourage adaptive housing by allowing conversion of a limited number of existing hotel rooms into affordable housing for individuals and families, and thereby fulfilling a housing need not addressed by the city's existing housing inventory. The PDH district should be located so as to take advantage of the proximity to existing transit routes, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and should not be located on sites that have a significant redevelopment potential. The PDH district lists a number of review criteria for evaluation of these projects. The location of the hotel and motel, which I went over previously, the potential of the site for significant redevelopment, the history of the property maintenance and fire codes for the proposed site, and I would note there have not been any fire codes or property maintenance codes in the last 5 years, the proximity of the site to existing transit routes, as I noted in my memo, the proximity of the site to pedestrian and bicycle facilities, the inclusion of housing is suitable for seniors and for persons with disabilities when it is appropriate as part of the adaptive housing facility. Staff would note there are 20 ground floor units, with 1 unit required to be improved as an accessible unit to meet ADA requirements. The suitability of the proposed management plan. This project will be subject to the management plan for upkeep and maintenance of Parkway Landing at Williamsburg. A copy of that was provided in your packet. The project will be professionally managed by an accredited apartment and management company, an on-site manager with staff. The premises on a part-time basis is outlined in the management plan. The on-site manager will be responsible to respond to residents' concerns, coordinate move-ins and move-outs, maintain the complex to make sure any maintenance or upkeep issues are properly attended to. This project will contain an area where information on important community events and services may be posted, including but not limited to the Hands Together Historic Triangle event each year, information about local free and low-cost clinics like Old Town Medical Center and Dental Center, and Lackey Free Clinic, an internet cafe, communal computer, and internet connection will have a link to the city's Human Services webpage for residents to use as an online access point to location services. Additional details are noted in your management plan. The compatibility of the adaptive housing facility with existing residential commercial development in the vicinity of the proposed location. This property is located on Parkway Drive, which is a side street from 2nd Street. The property is adjacent to the Parkway Building, Colonial Equipment, and Cyphers Plumbing along the left side, with 2nd Street Bistro along the rear, which are zoned Corridor Commercial Business District B2. An undedicated right-of-way is located to the right of the property, and to the right of the right-of-way on Parkway Drive is Parkway Townhomes, which contains 30 townhouses. The scale and intensity of the proposed 42 adaptive housing units are compatible with existing residential and commercial development in that area. There is a demand for affordable housing units in the city. The rezoning request will provide a housing product that will help to address the needs, since the project will open with rents ranging from $695 to $995 a month, including water and trash service, based on the size and number of individuals in the unit. The applicant proposes flexible lease terms and small deposits ranging from $300 to $600, depending on each tenant's individual circumstances, as outlined in the summary. The applicant states this apartment complex has been designed for and will be marketed to Greater Williamsburg workforce, both permanent and temporary, as well as to students and seniors. This project takes advantage of the city's PDH district by converting the 48 underutilized hotel rooms into 42 affordable housing units, which helps to fulfill needs in the city. The project also meets the basic criteria of the PDH district for this housing type. Therefore, staff recommends that Planning Commission recommend to City Council that the request to rezone .885 acres at 216 Parkway Drive from B2 to PDH be approved, because the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the additional 42 units helps to fill affordable housing needs in the city as detailed in the revised ordinance. The revised ordinance approves the conversion of the 48 rooms into 42 adaptive housing units, the conceptual site plan, and the management plan. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Scott Foster, the attorney for the applicants, are also here to speak to the commission.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Murphy before we proceed? Great. Would the applicant like to make a presentation as well?
To the right. Good afternoon, Planning Commission. Mr. Patel and I are very excited about the potential rezoning at 216 Parkway Drive before you today. We believe adaptive housing is the highest and best use for this parcel, and that use would benefit the city, the microeconomy of the Northeast Triangle, Mr. Patel, and most importantly, future residents of the complex. When created, the intent of the PDH district was to allow for the conversion of a controlled number of motel rooms within the B2 district into affordable housing for individuals and families, responding to a demand not otherwise being met by the city's current housing stock. The conversions are to take place on parcels that are close to existing transit routes, bicycles, and pedestrian facilities, and that lack other significant redevelopment potential. This parcel consists of just .885 acres, and as Ms. Murphy points out in her memo, given the small size, limited road frontage, and modern setback requirements, the parcel has very limited commercial redevelopment potential. The same factors that make it a poor fit for commercial redevelopment make it a great fit for adaptive housing. The limited road frontage and parking in the rear of the lot lends itself to an attractive curb appeal from 2nd Street and Parkway Drive, as well as providing privacy and security for its residents. It's located between two major WADA bus arteries, and is a short walk or bike ride to the transportation center where riders can access points up and down the peninsula. Further, this location is very convenient to centers of employment at the college and Colonial Williamsburg. Given these characteristics, I think we'd be hard-pressed to find another parcel in the city that is better suited for the PDH district. As Ms. Murphy pointed out in her presentation and memo, this project will convert 48 motel rooms into 42 efficiency and one-bedroom style apartments, 20 on the first floor and 22 on the second. I can walk you through some of these floor plans. I think it's worth a visual. Second. So on my left here, efficiency A schematic, 18 of those, efficiency B schematic, 8 of those, efficiency C, 7 of those, one bedroom. You can see the one bedroom. That's the distinction between an efficiency and a one bedroom is the partition between the bedroom and eating and living area. And then on the right there, a type A unit is one that is fully accessible to someone who's in a wheelchair, so lower countertops and different bathroom facilities, shower facilities. It's important to point out that these are going to be real apartments with all the functionality one expects from apartment living. All units will be individually metered for electricity with the option to pay by usage to Dominion or to simply pay a flat fee to the apartment complex. All units will have new high-efficiency heating and cooling systems, a refrigerator, cooktop, oven, and sink. If demand exists, Mr. Patel is open to providing furnished units as well. Communal amenities include a renovated pool, an adjacent picnic area, communal gathering space in what we're calling an internet cafe, which will have a communal computer with an internet connection, a small exercise facility, coin laundry, resident storage, which will be available on a first-come, first-served basis. We'll also provide an on-site mail facility. We feel this is a useful feature that provides privacy and convenience and will hopefully lead to the establishment of long-term residents. And while it's not a community amenity, I think it's worth mentioning that pets will be permitted in the complex, subject to reasonable rules and regulations. As Ms. Murphy also pointed out, management will be handled by an accredited professional management company who provide a part-time on-site manager and a 24-hour resident hotline to deal with tenant issues. On-site safety features include a closed-circuit security camera system, a new comprehensive sprinkler system, and appropriate outdoor lighting. As Planning Commission knows, affordable housing of this type is in high demand in the city. In the 2018 housing study, Sarah Stafford noted that demand outpaces supply for housing at this price point, and a significant portion of Williamsburg residents are cost-burdened. This project responds directly to those needs. As I pointed out in the narrative submitted along with the application, at approximately $750 to $10,050 per unit, inclusive of utilities, this project will meet a portion of that demand and offer an opportunity for low to moderate income residents to rent safe and attractive housing without being cost burdened. It's clear that these apartments will fulfill the city and Mr. Patel's goal of providing housing for Williamsburg workforce, students, and seniors. It's important to point out a few things about Mr. Patel and his family business. For 17 years, they've been solid corporate citizens of Williamsburg, making numerous improvements, continuing to invest in their property, ensuring that it's attractive and well kept, and that visitors feel safe and welcome. As the Smith travel numbers I enclosed in the application indicate, despite these best efforts, this property is significantly underperforming. While this rezoning may convert his motel into an apartment use, Mr. Patel is committed to maintaining this property as an attractive, well-kept, and a safe place, just as he does today. In conclusion, converting this underperforming property is a win for the city, Mr. Patel, and most importantly, future residents of the complex. I respectfully ask that you provide a favorable recommendation for its rezoning. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. John Harrison from Hopkins Associates is here as well, and he'll be able to answer any technical questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Foster?
Just one quick question. Mrs. Murphy in her presentation mentioned that it's going to be marketed to students as well as, so the goal of this this zoning is workforce housing. So is it going to fill up with students and about the workforce housing that it's intended to benefit? Or?
So we have a large definition of students. So for the purpose of this application and Mr. Patel's purposes, students include people who come here over the summer or in the fall for a short time period to work in the local economy. The traditional, I'm not sure this is the program anymore, but the traditional nomenclature is the J1 student. So they come here from overseas, work for 3 or 4 months, and then go home. So that's how the student definition applies. Now, will it be open to the general population, and is it potential for a William & Mary student to come and live there? Yes, but based on the experience at the flats of Williamsburg, the demand for student housing on this side of town is light.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, will there be a minimum lease term?
I believe it's minimum's 3 months.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Foster?
All right.
Great.
I'll be available for anything else. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right. Before we get to our discussion, there's a few people in the audience, and I have several speaker cards here. So what I'm going to do is read the name on the speaker cards in the order that I have them here in a stack. So when you hear your name called, please come up to the podium and tell us what you want us to hear. We will have a 5-minute time limit. I think that should be plenty of time, but just so you know, there's a little clock up there, so please keep an eye on that and keep your remarks to under 5 minutes. So the first, and after we're through with all the speaker cards, if there are any people who came in and didn't get a chance to fill one out, you'll have an opportunity to speak as well. So the first one I have is Deborah De Los Reyes. Deborah?
Should I hit something?
Nope, that'll all be handled over here. Thank you.
Okay, there it goes. All right, I'm at 456. Hi, I'm Debbie De Los Reyes, and I reside at 120 Parkway Court. I am actually on the opposite side of the townhomes that this hotel backs up to. I purchased our home in 2016 in the 280s, and I will say this, that our garages do not hold all makes and models of vehicles. Our driveways are very short and will barely hold 2 vehicles in the driveway. Our road is not wide enough to be able to park along the side of the road. So if you have maintenance crew, companies coming through, they have to park on Parkway Drive. We have limited overflow parking for our neighbors that have 3 vehicles. Typically, we are supposed to be single-family homes. However, we do have multi-family units within our townhomes. Parking has been the #1 issue that has been addressed at our HOA meetings. Many of our residents have to park on Parkway Drive, and they have concerns because they are elderly. People, though the road is supposed to be 25, people do drive at a very high rate. Also, when you are pulling out of Parkway Court, where our townhomes are located, the 30 townhomes, with those parking on Parkway Drive on each side, it's very difficult to see out when you're pulling out. Also, traffic has increased at the stoplight of 2nd Street and Parkway Drive. My concern is with our problems of parking, and we've tried to address how we can handle that amongst the neighbors. At this point, we have our overflow designed for our neighbors and guests. However, that is only, I think, what, 8 extra parking spaces that we have. We also have people with small children who are also afraid but have to park on Parkway Drive at times to get to their townhouse. We've all been concerned how the city allowed this parking issue to occur. Though I can appreciate Mr. Patel's desire to maintain his business, he has kept up his hotel. It has been very attractive. I can understand that, and I can appreciate that. I cannot imagine the parking nightmare that we are going to have by having these units. And I will say this, that I feel the need for the city is really for families and folks that have children. When we're looking at 1-bedrooms and efficiencies, I want you to ask yourself, who will that be? And are we going to have 5 children in 1 bedroom? That's not how I would like to see children raised here in Williamsburg. I would like to ask you to reconsider this proposal, because at this time, also the 2nd Street employees do park on Parkway Drive. I cannot say for sure, but I have been told by my son who used to work there, my teenage son, that they are not allowed to park in their own parking lot due to their own parking issues. So the employees park on Parkway Drive. If you were to drive there in the evenings, you will see how busy Parkway Drive is and how many cars are parked there. And it is a great concern when you think about having these apartments. You will have visitors. You will have more than 1 car that is residing. That is a given. and it will be a nightmare parking situation. And I really think that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next card is from Kimberly Harris McBride, also at Parkway Court.
Hi.
Hello.
I reside on Parkway Court, and again, we have totally vested into that property. We moved there because it was a small area where there wasn't a lot of congestion, and we have value, invested value into our homes, our townhomes. They mentioned about college kids. We've all have been that age, and there've always been some type of incidents. But it's like we, as the residents, have to suffer. These are our apartments renting, and I understand and I feel compassion for people that are having challenges finding adequate housing. However, when we're looking at, college students, parties, different other activities going on, the closed circuit protects them, but what protects us as residents? We pay a lot of taxes. We pay our mortgages. We keep our areas clean. There's no place for them to hang out. Who protects us? That's up to you guys. We need protection. That's all I have.
Thank you. The next card is Tom and Mary Jane Ulrich.
I'm the Tom part of the partnership, and Mary Jane is going to concede some of her time for me. So if I go over the 5 minutes, she will take less. And for the record, I very seldom ever get the opportunity to speak for my wife, so I'm relishing this moment. Just for the record, I would like you all to know that Mary Jane and I have left a community that has had similar type housing. So we have some experience with that. And also for the record, I want to let you know that we are not speaking against the idea of this adaptive housing concept, nor are we necessarily speaking against it for there, because we do not want to be part of the not in my backyard a contingent, not that these folks were, because the issues that they have, we share as well, that you just heard. But I want to, and I also want to say for the record that Mr. Patel has been an excellent neighbor, and so we want to see his business be a winner, because that will help us as well. So now with that context, we do feel that the proposal has a lot of problems to it. There's a sentence in here that was actually read that we actually disagree with, and that's the last sentence of the plan. And it says, the adjacent parcel now contains townhomes fulfilling the intended use in the comprehensive plan. Conversion of this parcel to multifamily would be consistent with the adjacent land use. We disagree with that, and you heard some of the reasons why we would disagree with that. And from Mary Jane and I's perspective, and we've studied the plan, we feel that the issue is density, and a consequence of that density issue you've already heard, and that's a parking problem. But in addition to that, with the density, we don't know how many people are going to be assigned to the unit, and that needs to be clarified. If it's just one person or even two people per unit, that's better. But our experience has been that's not what happens. What happens is that people go in and they either sneak in and live in those units, or perhaps the units will have a larger rule around what the limit is on it. But if there are multiple people beyond the 42 that are stated in the proposal, that is going to be a huge issue. Parking being the number one, but there will be noise, there will be trash, there will be security issues, there will be all of those issues. And as I said, we experienced that in our previous household. And so what is also critical is this on-site manager person that they are saying in the plan. They are saying it's going to be a part-time position. That is not going to be a large enough position in order to maintain all the rules that are going to be a part of this unit. So we would suggest that that be reconsidered, that the requirement be a full-time position at least. Another one is security. They say that there are going to be these cameras available. That's great. But my question is, who's going to is there going to be constant monitoring of those cameras so that anything that is amiss can be spotted immediately, and then the police be called, and so on and so forth? So that would be another consideration to be thought of when approving this type of thing. So I guess our final position is that if this is going to be approved, and we understand that if it's not approved and if the hotel goes under, that's a bigger problem for the neighborhood. So we'd like to see something that is going to be a win for both sides, both the residents of the new proposed housing unit, but also for the neighbors as well. And the only thing that we can think of that will make that happen is that the density level be reduced, and that the security situation be changed so that make sure that there's constant monitoring, and that the maintenance person that's supposed to be on site, that goes from a part-time position. That person is not going to be able to keep up with all of the issues. We know that for sure. That should go from part-time. It should go from part-time to full-time. You want to add anything?
Sorry. Hi, Mary Jane.
You're fine.
The only other, one of the issues was the enhanced lighting, which was part of security. Our unit actually backs right up. Where we live in our townhome is directly in line with the hotel and the beginning of the parking lot. If that includes huge lighting to the parking lot, that would severely impact what we're going to be seeing, like being able to sleep at night on that side of the building. So if that's like really bright lighting in the parking lot or around the building, all of the townhomes that on our side and in that building, we would have an impact from that. And even though we do have a wooded buffer, it is not pine trees, so for a lot of the year, there's not really any screening. You're looking through just branches. So we're concerned about that. If that would be extremely bright lighting, that would be a problem for sleeping and issues. And again, I guess the most concern is the density, and that there's only one parking place per unit, and that in reality, that does not usually ever work. And that if there's a lot more people, even having the hotel there, and when we built the place and studied the area and understood what that meant, that's been fine. We do experience it's noisier during the summer, but not too bad. But if you raise the density, I mean, people will be living there, not just visiting, and the noise level could become greater. So having 42 units in such a small building and with such increased parking, because that could end up being over 100 cars or more, we're concerned about the noise issue too. And that would be all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Our next card is Gail Liakos.
I'm going to read my comments if you don't mind. I am a resident of Wyndham Plantation, which is located off of Parkway Drive in the city's Corridor Protection District, and it is right down the street from the property under consideration today. The Wyndham community consists of 100 residential condominium units, 84 of which are owner-occupied and 16 which are rentals. I would like to preface my remarks by stating up front that I am not opposed to the concept of a planned development housing district facility. However, I am conflicted about the possibility of one being located on Parkway Drive. As a homeowner, I have the usual concerns about the facility's possible effect on property values, safety issues associated with an anticipated increase in vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic in such a concentrated space, and that sufficient consideration has been given by the city planners to ensure that the visual character of the community will be protected and maintained. I have read the city's comprehensive plan. I have read the housing assessment report. I have read the applicable city ordinances, and I have read multiple studies on the impact and effect of affordable housing on property values of the surrounding neighborhoods. I have to admit, overall, the studies concluded that affordable housing projects did not necessarily negatively impact property values, but there is a general consensus among the various studies that certain variables may produce a negative impact, and the one variable that caught my attention was the concentration of affordable housing in a relatively small area. As has already been stated, the Williamsburg Code has set parameters for the planned development housing district so that there are to be no more than two housing facilities limited to 150 adapted housing units, and that consist of no more than 100 units in one facility. The Flats of Williamsburg, located off of Quarter Path, is the first adaptive housing facility approved by the city, which has 100 adaptive housing units. Although not situated on Parkway Drive directly, it is too located in the Corridor Protection District and is only approximately 1 mile from the proposed Econo Lodge location. If approved, the Econo Lodge will be the second and final adaptive housing facility in the city and will consist of 42 adaptive housing units. It would seem logical, therefore, to conclude that the only two planned development housing facilities located within 1 mile of each other would be concentrated in one area of the city. I would also like to point out that at the other end of Parkway Drive and at the intersection of Capitol Landing Road, we have the International Housing Village, which is also a converted motel, and for all intents and purposes, affordable housing for the international students. There are also several other older hotels and motels on the opposite corner, and they appear to be functioning as affordable housing to some of the residents in the city. If you can mentally visualize Parkway Drive, then you will see, if this rezoning request is approved, the 3 existing residential communities in this corridor, which are Wyndham Plantation, Wyndham West, and Parkway Towns, will be sandwiched between affordable housing units located from the intersection of Capitol Landing Drive and the intersection of 2nd Street. Since the effects of affordable housing on property values has been researched and studied for over 30 years by people a lot smarter than me, I will take their word for it that such a concentration will have a negative effect on property values for the surrounding communities. Why should the negative effect of property values be a consideration in the scheme of things? I cannot speak about the residents of Wyndham West or Parkway Towns, but I do know the 171 neighbors of Wyndham Plantation. We are vested in the care and maintenance of our homes and the upkeep of our community. We are invested in the Williamsburg community. Our residents are teachers, doctors, and other professionals. We volunteer at the Colonial Williamsburg, local hospitals and prisons. We are CERT volunteers, and we serve on local boards for the other civic and religious organizations. I would like to make one final observation on the effects of the PDH facility, and that's on the occupants. The Econo Lodge proposes that the Flats is a success to the city, to the property owners, and the occupants. But the Flats found a different reaction. Their occupants stated that despite the popularity of the affordable units in the marketplace, the tenants felt that they were still part of a motel, partially diminishing their sense of home and permanency. Therefore, I would like to say that affordable housing units should do more than just provide a roof over someone's head. It should also offer a sense of pride and dignity in the place one calls home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is R. Wayne Johnson, I think.
Good afternoon. I live in Wyndham Plantation. Gail covered a lot of what a lot of the homeowners there feel. The reason why we chose that area, it was convenient to Old Town. We could walk there. We could walk from down to 2nd Street Grill at nighttime, not feel a bit of harm whatsoever. My wife and I moved here a year ago, and we came from an area that is going to be affected just like what you're all planning or they're planning to approve. They built senior citizens' homes in the back. After it was filled up, they come through and built low housing, adequate homes for certain individuals. It turned into altogether what everybody thought it wouldn't be. The poor people that owned the homes in the back, senior citizens, they couldn't even sell them. So I know that for a fact. I know the traffic on 2nd Street, traffic on Parkway Drive will increase, and it's hard to get out there now. There's no traffic light. And another problem that I saw, they said 1-bedroom apartments. Family 1-bedroom apartments. How many kids are going to be able to sleep in a 1-bedroom apartment with a man and wife? How many families? There's no law that says once they move in, you can't get them out. So I disapprove with what he's trying to do, but I wish him the best of luck. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card is Jim Hamblett.
Good afternoon. I think my concern is purely economic. We bought the home, we moved in on Halloween. We bought the home, we thought we'd have a nice, quiet community. But when you're coming in one way off Capitol Landing Road, you've got the density housing, you've got a lot of low-end, older hotels up there. Are they going to come back in 6 months and go, oh, we want to do the same thing? Is it Colonel Waller? Is the one on the other side of that, the Rochambeau? And all of a sudden, we're going to be a low-income district? There's no guarantee. When I moved in that home, I had no idea that they were going to be putting in housing. You would not approve apartment complexes with the distance of 8.885 acres. You wouldn't put 40 houses. You wouldn't be allowed to do that. Yet you're asking us to come in and go, yeah, sure, let them have it. What's going to happen to my property values then? Who's going to pay the taxes for these kids in schools? My taxes have got to go up to pay for it somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. The last card I have is Diana Kriegel.
Hello, I'm Diana Kriegel. I'm a resident of Wyndham Plantation, which is located off of Parkway Drive, where Gail lives as well. I am here to support the conversion of the Econo Lodge from motel rooms to low-cost housing. I believe that Williamsburg needs significantly more low-cost housing to accommodate the many workers needed to support the tourist industry. I agree that the Econo Lodge is in a good location for access to bus routes, grocery store, and to businesses that could provide employment. However, I do have some concerns about the plan as it's currently written. First of all, I'm concerned about the proposed cost of the units and the amount of square footage. And again, as other people have mentioned, the density or the number of units that are being proposed. If you're going from 48 motel rooms to 42 units, basically you've got a room or a unit the size of a motel room, which is, I think, a little bit small. It seems that the cost is geared towards 2 incomes, but the size of the units would be quite small for 2 adults, and even worse if there are children. Also, access to Second Street has become a problem since Second Street was reconfigured for 1 lane in each way. It's difficult to make a left turn from Parkway onto Second Street, and this will be exacerbated by the additional traffic from the Econo Lodge units. So I think that consideration of that intersection should be included in the project, the impact that it's going to have there. Another concern is the concentration of planned development housing district units in one geographic area of the city. Other PDH units are less than 2 miles away on York Street. Additionally, the International Housing Site located at Parkway Drive and Capitol Landing Road is another low-cost housing site. Our condominiums will be bracketed by low-cost housing developments, which could have a significant economic impact on our subdivision. Would it be better to locate the remaining PDH units in another area of the city? Again, I definitely support low-cost housing in Williamsburg. If the Econo Lodge is truly the best location available, I support the proposal, but I would like to see residents' concerns addressed before this project moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card I have. We haven't heard from everybody in the room, and that's fine. Many of you may just be here to listen. So there's someone with his hand up in the back. If you'd like to come forward, please just, when you get to the podium, state your name and your address, and try to hold your remarks to 5 minutes, please.
I just have some comments, and I do at the
Do
end.
we have your name and?
My name's Russ Listman. I live in Wyndham on the Parkway.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have some comments, and then I do have a question, which I would appreciate someone on the Planning Commission to answer. I know Williamsburg is redeveloping all over the place. Midtown gets Midtown Road, where we live, someone said is called East End. We get a repaved Second Street. Midtown gets apartments and shops. The East End gets a refurbished Econo Lodge. Okay, seems like a little disparity there. And it's been mentioned several times by people presenting that there is a definite need for low-income housing in Williamsburg. So this is my question, why I'd like someone to ask. When the developers for Midtown Road stood in front of you, did you require them to include low-income and adaptive housing in their plans? My question.
We did not make that requirement. I don't know that we were permitted to make such a requirement, but Ms. Murphy might be able to. Yeah.
I was just curious if there's such a need, if that was not addressed when you decided to do Midtown Road. Why is it getting addressed on our side of town, where everyone has previously said it is the only part of Williamsburg that seems to be the center for low-income housing? Anyway, I was just curious if that was ever addressed when that development was put before the board. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are other speakers, I see a hand up, please just come down to the podium so we can all hear you, and give us your name and where you live, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Melody Loftheim. I live at 111 Adams Street off Capitol Landing. Sorry I came in late. I too am concerned about property values. I do want to see low-income housing offered in the community and in the city limits in particular because of the central location for the general community, York County, James City County, the bus and everything. I personally want to know how that property will be re-envisioned, how it will offer the opportunity for people to pay a little less for the small space that, I mean, a one-bedroom apartment is not big, but be good quality building so that property values in general are kept safe. So that's what I'm urging you to look at. I think you can have big houses that are well-built and well-kept, small houses or small apartments, whatever the property is, it can be done right and kept well, and that's what I want to see with that property. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, I'm Brad Bonney. I'm a resident of 223 Tyler Brooks Drive in Skipworth Farms. I didn't really plan on speaking today, but I feel like I had at least give my opinion after listening to the other half of this opposing the project. I fully support the proposal as it's presented. I feel just doing some quick math on what a $695 or $995 rent would afford. I mean, you can back into someone getting paid $34,000 a year. I mean, I don't think that's, I mean, I would look at that as a middle-class kind of residence. I'm not sure what the concern is for some of the people that would potentially be in this project, but it seems to fit the mold and what we need in this city. When I moved here 2 years ago, I had difficulty finding a one-bedroom apartment. My wife and I found one. It happened to be a condo that we got, but I think we paid $1,300 a month for one bedroom. Fortunately, my wife and I could afford that, but I think there's plenty of people that could not do it in this town. I think to ask people to live in Newport News, New Kent, and have commutes that are outside of our market isn't necessarily a reasonable thing to do. I think if you want to have employers who can hire people who live in their market, then projects like this will work. Also, if this project were backing up to my home in my neighborhood, I would still support it. I think there are hotels in this market that would fit this model, and I think it's a viable reuse for these properties. As it stands, I don't think there's any traffic in this hotel now because I don't think it's at its highest economic use. So I feel by not allowing this proposal, you're limiting the economic potential for the current owner. Thank you.
Thank you. See another hand over here, please. If you could approach the podium.
Hi, I'm Adrienne McKinney. I have a house in Parkway Towns. I bought it 2 years ago, like everyone else, and was just very excited. I think the density issue to me is paramount. We have 30 townhouses, and the parking is a really big problem. And the traffic on is terrible. When you make a decision, please go look at it at night. You can't make left or right turns, I think, at both ends. It's just becoming a very crowded area if you watch the traffic. I think this is just too concentrated. Even half this size might be appropriate. It's a lot of people in one little space. And again, we have a larger area and it's still fairly crowded there. But I think this is just, again, I understand the idea of providing homes for people. It is expensive. I know that my mortgage, this is a quarter of my mortgage though. And so for property value, I think that's a little bit, it's an insult, or it's difficult to imagine putting that many people in such a small little area and not having some real parking problems, as well as people, lights, maybe potential parties and things like that. I mean, I'm repeating everything that some people have said very eloquently. I just found out about this, and I'm a little bit upset, and please consider it. Please come over and look at the traffic, and ever since they redid 2nd Street, it's just been awful. You can't make a left turn at certain times. It's hard to get out of the neighborhood. Cars are coming so fast. I know it's 25 miles an hour, but it's going to be a real concern. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. It looks like that might be, yes, Mr. Foster.
I can speak to a few of these concerns. As proposed, 42 parking spots on the site. By eliminating the curb cut on Parkway Drive, I believe Carolyn, are we adding 2 or 3 on-street spots?
if you take the distance from the entrance to the property adjacent at Parkway, the commercial property, I think you can get 5 parking
So
spaces,
we're 5 net
125 feet.
5 net positive on-street spots, and based on the experience at the flats of Williamsburg, people who are renting at this rate, not everyone has a car, so a lot of people ride the bus or bike. So it's anticipated that the parking pressure on this existing lot will not be what it would be, say, at High Street. So folks who often have 2 vehicles. Tenant mix, again, the best comparative we have at the flats of Williamsburg, that's primarily workforce. A few students sprinkled in, a few seniors sprinkled in, but for the most part, workforce. And as far as lighting goes, I believe there's an ordinance on point about there being 0-foot candles at the property line. So the only reason we mention lighting is we want to make sure this place is safe and well lit, but we're still going to comply with the ordinance and don't intend to intrude on the neighboring property. So that's all I have.
Before you go, could you also respond to we had a couple of comments about the number of people that might be living in a single unit?
So there's an ordinance on that as well. Ms. Murphy?
The ordinance limits it to 3 in an efficiency or 1-bedroom and 5 in a 2 or 3-bedroom. And that's not unrelated people, that's people.
So in this case, it would be a maximum of 3.
Okay, thank you. All right. Ms. Murphy, do we move to the open forum now, or is this the point at which we go ahead and have our discussion?
If you've closed the public hearing, you can go ahead and have your discussion.
And then come back to open forum?
No.
So we should have the open
Forum
forum
is
now?
later in the agenda.
Right, okay.
Separate.
All right, so we'll close the public discussion. Who would like to start?
Oh, I don't mind starting.
Great.
I'd like to get a little clarification. You mentioned the ordinance limiting the number of people. Is that a zoning ordinance, or is there a building codes ordinance that restricts the number of people based on square footage and CFMs into the space?
That's both.
Both.
The building code will restrict it based on the building code requirements, and the PDH ordinance also has a limit of no more than 3,
Okay.
up to 3.
Do we know what the building codes ordinance restricts the occupancy to?
The building code restricts the number of individuals based on the square footage. So yes, but yes, the building code will come into effect when they get permits as to the occupancy of the units, and also the zoning ordinance they're written in efficiency in 1-bedrooms can have no more than 3.
Okay. And I know that there's been a number of concerns brought up about cars. Does the owner have the ability to restrict the number of cars per tenant or per rental unit?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for those clarifications. I think that we live in a great community that has a number of issues in it, dealing with the diversity of housing. I think having housing that's available in the $695 to $995 is really a very important thing for our community. There are just a wealth of people who are traveling to work in Williamsburg every day, from Newport News, from Surrey. From personal experience, when something goes on the market in that price range, it's snatched up very quickly because the demand is so great. And I think for a community to be balanced, having a spectrum of housing available is really important. This hotel, from what Ms. Murphy said, has been very well maintained and kept up, and we have no reason to believe that it wouldn't continue to be. I think that allowing this to convert to apartments such as discussed is important. I think they've got the opportunity to restrict the number of cars. I think the zoning ordinance will restrict the number of people. And from experience, I think it's unlikely that you'll have multiple people. I think from the experience and discussions that I've had with people, it's usually going to be one or two people who are starting out. I think that this is a good idea, and I understand everybody's concerns, and I appreciate everybody coming and speaking, but overall, I think that this is a good idea for the community.
I think if we had a proposal to build a new building of any kind of apartment or hotel on this site, we would have a very different conversation today, because the issues of density and traffic are hugely important to all of us, and we take that very, very seriously. But at the same time, we have a motel that at one time was relatively full most of the time, and I think we've kind of forgotten that there was that time here, and so I think we have, as Mr. Granger said, we have an owner who is motivated to continue his practice of maintaining a quality property, even though the tenants are now, instead of one night, they're 3 months or more. And I do see that as even providing more stability, because hotels or motels like this, others in town, have turned into places where, unfortunate people are living long term in kind of a different financial setup. So I agree with Mr. Granger that we need this in Williamsburg. The City Council has enacted this ordinance based on that need, and this seems to me to be a solid proposal that meets that need.
I agree with my colleagues. I think this is something that's important for the city. Low-cost housing is one of our prime objectives in the comprehensive plan. I think this PDH district is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I think it'll be an asset to the town, giving people who ordinarily couldn't live here closer access to their work.
I likewise agree with those comments. I think that this addresses a big need in the community, and one that I can speak to personally is that over the last 2 years, not until very recently have I been able to easily find affordable housing in the city. And I actually used to very recently live along Merrimack Trail, so I know this area well, and I know those left turns that you're talking about. And I do understand those traffic concerns, and I've seen the street parking that you're talking about, but I do think that the applicant is attempting to address those issues by adding some street parking, as well as, it sounds like perhaps a discussion that we should have as a commission is to what extent we can ask the applicant to limit the number of cars on the property as a whole. But I will say that as a commission, we've also spent a lot of time discussing and focusing on the Northeast Triangle, that area of the city that you are residents of. And one of those things, and while maybe it's not as flashy as Midtown Row, is the changes along 2nd Street, making it more easy to bike, making it more easy to walk, and actually I think improving that left turn, because once those changes occurred, I personally at least found it easier to make that left turn because I wasn't cutting across 4 lanes of traffic. So with those thoughts in mind, I think that's a discussion we should have about parking at the site, but otherwise I think that this addresses a need for affordable housing in the community, and is an overall benefit actually to 2nd Street by allowing for more residents that could frequent or work at those businesses.
Okay, so I think we do have consensus on the board, and I actually heard consensus in the audience that the PDH as an idea is something that we need to have, that this is something that's important for the city. I did the math too, as I guess a couple other people were trying to do, just thinking about what this 700 to 1,000 a month range really means, and for it to meet the standard of affordable, which is to say not cost burdened, that requires spending no more than 30% of your income. And so what we're talking about here are units that would be affordable for somebody making between $14 and $20 an hour. And so what we're talking about are frontline interpreters in the historic area, where there is huge demand for housing in town. We simply can't meet that need right now. in town, and that's pretty clear. So I think there's consensus on that point, that we need more of this. I think there's also consensus, even though it wasn't really brought up today, that we have a massive oversupply of hotel beds here in town, and there are a number of reasons for that. So this solves that problem as well. I think the concerns that we heard from nearby residents need to be taken seriously, and the two concerns that I heard over and over again were really concerned parking on the one hand and traffic on the other, and we've talked about that a little bit more. So I think we ought to give a little bit more thought to how we can kind of mitigate those concerns. This board might not be the right place to address some of them, but for Ms. Murphy, just as we think about that intersection, what is the trigger for example, developing installing a stoplight at that intersection? What would be the thing that would have to happen for that intersection to be served a little bit better?
There has to be the right mix of trips, of turning movements. So that's something we've looked at every year or two, and they haven't met the requirements that's needed for a traffic light there yet. As far as the traffic for this project, we did look at, we didn't require a traffic study, because if you look at the traffic counts, basically the city engineer has informed me that reducing the number of rooms from hotel to apartments, and the apartments are slightly lower generators. So an apartment is a less generator than a hotel room. So this would generate less traffic than a hotel if the hotel was in full occupancy. So I think but as far as a traffic light at 2nd Street, that's something we look at, and when it meets the trigger to install one, then the city would look at installing one.
Do you have a sense if we're close to that trigger at this point?
They weren't close the last time we checked.
Okay.
The big trigger for that, if you remember, was the timeshares that was across on the other direction off of Penniman Road with the, I believe, 400 and some timeshares. That was the big trigger that was going to push the traffic light there. So since the timeshares have not been built, the numbers have not been such that requires the traffic light.
Okay. My next question concerns, there's already a list in the staff comments of recommended stipulations that would go along with this approval. Do we want to have a discussion about a kind of a stipulation concerning parking?
This is a rezoning request, and as the city attorney reminded me with my revised ordinance, is that you cannot put conditions on a rezoning request. Only the applicant can make conditions, so forth. So basically what I have in the ordinance, in the revised ordinance, is we are approving the reduction from the 48 hotel rooms to 42 units. We are approving the conceptual site plan. We are also approving the management plan as submitted. So other than that, we cannot add conditions to a rezoning request. We could add conditions to site plan approval or special use permits, but we cannot do that to a rezoning request. Chris is shaking her head at that, so I'm stating that correctly.
So for an additional condition to be put on this application, at what point would that have to happen? Would that have to be offered by the applicant? Can that happen at the council?
There aren't any proffers submitted with this.
Right.
So you are basing it subject to the existing requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, so just what's in front of us? It's a yes or no.
But as an applicant, they can hear the discussion today and take away points and modify their plan before it goes to council? Yes.
So my last question, and this is just, I think, as a point of information, but Ms. Murphy, I wonder if you would remind us, this is currently zone B2. What are some of the by right uses? What are some of the other options? One option is the hotel.
Hotels, motels, restaurants, offices. Those are your typical business type uses. You have, like on 2nd Street, you have car uses that require a special use permit. you have restaurants, you have a little shopping center that has a carpet dealer, and so it's those types of general uses that are allowed in the B2 district. The ordinance for B2, other areas in the city, Capitol Landing Road is not zoned B2. Capitol Landing Road was rezoned to B4, so that would not qualify to a PDH. The only other area would be the upper area of Richmond Road from, say, Bypass Road to the city line. That's zone B2. So you've got this section of town, and you've got the upper section of Richmond Road that are the remaining B2 districts, which are currently the zoning ordinance states that you could go to a PDH district if you're located in a B2 district.
Okay.
So you've got 2nd Street and Penniman Road and that little piece of Page Street.
So that also goes to, I think, one of the other comments that we heard, which is we've got a couple of these on this end of town already. That's partly a function of the B2 zoning and where we also have a concentration of older hotels. Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts about this? I'll just say, too, I agree with the sentiment of the commission. I'm also very sympathetic to some of the concerns that we had. I do hope that there are ways to address some of those concerns. This board doesn't have the ability to really make that happen. We just have to say a yes or no. I do think, on the whole, this is a reasonable proposal, and I think we ought to be mindful of the fact that the applicant is actually giving up some ability to redevelop this property by rezoning it from business uses to a residential use. And I think that some of the concerns that we heard from the residents might be moderated a little bit with that knowledge. So with that said, I'd love for somebody to make a motion on this, unless we need more discussion.
I'll move that we recommend approval of PCR 19-010 to the City Council.
Second.
I'll second it.
Does that include the proposed ordinance, the revised proposed ordinance?
The revised proposed ordinance, including the revised proposed ordinance.
Aaron?
Mr. Granger.
Aye.
Mr. Boswell.
Aye.
Mr. Klee.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Schaller.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is an open forum. If there's anybody here to speak on any matters other than what we've been talking about already, now's your chance to come address the commission. Great. We close the open forum. We have no site plans or subdivisions to discuss, no unfinished business. Is there any new business that we need to take up? We have some information items in the packet, the City Council report, the Planning Department monthly report, and the financial statement. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to address from any of those information items? All right. We don't have anything on our June 19th, anything scheduled right now for our June 19th meeting, is that correct?
Not yet, but if we may have use that date to help with the comp plan review for another chapter, so I'm leaving it open right now, but I'll let you know
Great.
how far along we get.
Great, thank you. With that, we're at the end of the agenda. I think we're adjourned.